up on We Talk News this week.
I think we also at this table believe nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed.
VP Kamala Harris hosts a cannabis roundtable at the White House and add her to the list of those calling for legalization. Plus, just when you thought the New York State cannabis rollout couldn't get any more dysfunctional, OCM's Damian Fagone gets suspended for his personal attacks on Jenny Love's founder, Jenny RG. And after their first lawsuit gets thrown out, another one is filed by a few Massachusetts companies against the USA and AG Merrick Garland, claiming that the Controlled Substances Act prevents them from running their business and operations and that the legal landscape is allowing interstate commerce amongst legal states, even though the plant continues to cling to its Schedule I classification. Plus, MSO giant Curaleaf is leaving its 3-year-old retail operation in Maine in a move to cut losses, while Germany passes the final vote to start legalization on April 1st. A Greek police officer gets busted for transporting 225 pounds of weed in his patrol car. You just can't make this stuff up. You're looking live at the newest edition of the New England Cannabis Convention here at the Heinz Auditorium in Boston. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. We're covering NECAN this weekend, and it's one of the reasons why we're moving our full We Talk News show from Friday's release to Mondays. But without any further ado, it's now time for We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Don't go away.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly review of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Elena Pinto. There's been some history over the past few weeks in Washington, D.C., and here in Massachusetts. First, the President Joe Biden mentions the injustices of cannabis possession crimes, and his Vice President Kamala Harris holds a roundtable at the White House where she declared she wants cannabis legalized. Add that to Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey's declaration of a pardon to all past cannabis possession crimes in the Bay State. We had that for you last week, but this week we get to hear from NORML's Chris Goldstein, who was in the room for the White House roundtable talk with Vice President Kamala Harris. PCM founder Jimmy Young has that story.
I think we all at this table believe nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed. And what we need to do is recognize that far too many people have been sent to jail for simple marijuana possession.
Yeah, I have to say it was a striking moment. Vice President Harris was sitting at the front of the table underneath a portrait of Theodore Roosevelt on his horse in the Roosevelt Room. And she raised her hands and she said, I'm just going to say it. We need to legalize marijuana. And taking a moment to express it exactly that clearly. Again, I think that what we're seeing is the White House adapt to the communication that we need with our community here.
Goldstein joined the White House roundtable with the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, legendary rap artist Fat Boy, and many past offenders of federal possession crimes, including himself.
But on 4/20/2013, about 1,000 people showed up, and we had a grand old time, let me tell you, great photos, and no one was arrested. But when we showed up in May, there was about 400 tactically armed law enforcement officers waiting for us, and the U.S. attorney there outside waiting to prosecute us, like on the spot, essentially. I ended up getting 2 citations for smoking marijuana at those protests, and then they took me to federal court over half a gram of cannabis. So 10 years ago this month, I stood before a federal judge in Philly, and I can tell you, it was one of the scariest moments of my life.
For that act of civil disobedience, Chris was fined $3,000, given probation for 2 years, and has lived with the repercussions of having a record for the past 10 years. Now, that record has been pardoned, but not expunged, and there is a difference. Chris shared why this moment of openly talking about the injustices in the country's federal cannabis laws with a vice president who, when she was an attorney general in California, earned a reputation for being tough on weed crimes. That has changed, as has President Biden. Biden's record on the war on drugs.
Again, she talks in context of having experience with it. President Biden himself was a different kind of what we call drug warrior. He wasn't a prosecutor, but he ended up promoting some bills that threw a lot of people in prison. And I do think that is what is poignant about this moment, Paul, is that we've asked every White House for 54 years to do something, anything, and take executive action in a positive direction, especially when it comes to just broad clemency of any sort. This is the first White House to do that.
Recognition of injustice is one positive for the cannabis reform movement. And now the biggest question remains about what and when will the DEA get around to descheduling or rescheduling cannabis from its most restrictive Schedule I of the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, made her appeal at that same meeting.
I believe that the promise of America includes equal justice under the law. And for too many, our criminal justice system has failed to live up to that core principle. We have gathered today, however, to address specifically the injustices that we have seen in federal marijuana policy. I have said many times, I think we all at this table believe nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed. And what we need to do is recognize that far too many people have been sent to jail for simple marijuana possession. And the impact is such that, in particular, Black Americans and Latinos are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession. And the disparity is even larger when you talk about the subset of Black men and Latino men.
Now, late breaking news out of Washington, D.C. has the Food and Drug Administration recognizing that cannabis does have medicinal applications and has urged the DEA to move its classification to Schedule III. So now you have the Health and Human Services recommending a schedule change, and the FDA and the White House. The DEA is notoriously slow in making any decisions, and they've already missed the president's deadline at the end of last year. So you have to think if they've got the message. Well, now we start our state-by-state roundup. Here's Levana Vassaw.
I'm Levana Vassaw from the Bay Sesh reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News. California tax reform across the state continues to be the hot topic between industry and local politicians. At stake is a battle over a potential tax hike if sales continue to go down. California NORML's office rejects any increase in sales taxes since the industry is already overtaxed. They're claiming that the already existing taxes have been moved into other programs than the ones they were created for. A big question in the Golden State: has California grown cannabis been getting less potent? Nah. New state testing rules are probably the reason why. Back in January, testing standards changed for the THC calculation that averaged a 7% decrease in potency in flower. The debate continues over the percent of THC as the key determining factor for consumers to make a purchase. On top of that, retail dispensaries in California are still banned from offering a smell test, which is so important when you're picking out a strain. Since you can't smell it, you have to be more reliant on testing results and process. Another point I want consumers to know about checking for potency and effect is to look at the whole cannabinoid profile, harvest and package dates, and terpenes. This is even more important when testing results have been proven to change from lab to lab. Retail dispensaries in California are not allowed to open up the jar and let customers get a good whiff of the flowers. So customers must rely more heavily on the test results to help determine their choice. Then there's the issue of testing only 1 out of 50 pounds to send to the lab for testing. So how accurate is the information being shared with stores who then report those results on their products to the customers? Prop 64, which created this mess of a supply chain of adult use regulations that mandated growers send their tested flower to the packagers and distributors before they end up on the dispensary shelves. And last and not least, terpenes. Some test results show terpene content. And the producers take that cost on, by the way, for a more expensive and extensive test. Labeling should also read if there was added or infused terpenes, like the kind people spray on or add to things like distillate vape cartridges. These infusions can be made with natural terpenes from hemp plants or other fruits, or lab manufactured fake terpenes. That's the California Report and some buying tips for you. I'm Lavana Vasa from the Bay Sesh, and that's this week's California Weed Talk News Report.
One more note of interest from Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. A group of operators from the Bay State is trying to sue the government again over federal illegality of cannabis in relation to being fair to legal licensed businesses. Verano Holdings Corp., Cannaprovisions Inc., Wise Acre Farm Inc., and Giassi Sellers have engaged a New York law firm to challenge the legality of the Controlled Substances Act. And the lawsuit claims that the CSA is unfair and unjust and outdated now that the legal cannabis landscape has changed. After all, 24 states have legalized adult use, and more than half of the adults over 21 in this country have access to legal weed in their state. The lawsuit also claims the inconsistencies with interstate commerce, which is not allowed but is practiced every day amongst the 24 legal states. Washington state legalized adult use back in 2012, but they still have not moved forward on some of the regulations new states are enjoying already. And that is changing, as Matthew Friedlander tells us in his Washington State report.
Hi, I'm Matthew Friedlander, coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. I have been out of the office for a few weeks, and this is my first report back since the end of our legislative session. There is a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right in. The Cannabis Alliance is Washington's largest cannabis trade group. This is a group that I've talked about in previous reports, and I am proud to say I serve on their board. We worked closely with people in the medical cannabis community to get a huge piece of legislation passed this year. The governor recently signed a bill that will remove the 37% excise tax off of Department of Health compliant cannabis products for registered medical cannabis patients. This will make these products 37% cheaper for registered patients at the point of purchase. This is just great for people in the medical cannabis community, and just a huge win in general for our industry. We were also able to get legislation passed that will allow cannabis licensees to compost their plant waste. Previously, this waste was mandated to be mixed with non-cannabis material and thrown in the garbage. So this biodegradable material will now be diverted from the landfill and into the compost stream where it belongs. This is a huge environmental win. This also will make things just easier in general for licensees to get rid of their waste. We also were able to help get a low potency beverage bill passed. Low potency cannabis beverages are becoming a more and more popular item. Washington State limited the purchase amount of these products to 72 fluid ounces, so 1 6-pack. So a person would only be able to purchase 1 6-pack at a time per day. And so as these popular products have grown in popularity, this is just a way for consumers to be able to purchase more of the things they are telling the world that they want. So those are some of the big wins that we have for you here in Washington. We also were able to deal with the high THC potency issue here in Washington to some degree. We were able to take legislation that was proposed and steer it more in the direction of providing money for a study about the effects of high THC, high potency THC products. The concern over psychosis, especially for young people, has been presented in many states over the last couple of years. And so here in Washington, we were able to steer that in the direction of finding out if this actually is an issue, and if it is, what is causing it. So that's what I have for you for the legislative session here in Washington State. I am Matthew Friedlander, reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Coming up tomorrow on the next part on We Talk News, the New York story continues to be dysfunctional, and now it's gotten personal between Jenny R.G. of Jenny Loves and the Office of Cannabis Management's Damian Fagone. We'll have that on Tuesday on We Talk News. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.
What if we're right? What if all of a sudden they discovered that there is medical use for marijuana and that it is good for you, and it's better than alcohol, and it's better than opioids, and it helps your health? What if we're right? What if they find that out?
Specific cannabinoids have medical value. These are facts.
I'm here today in hopes to assist in removing the demonized stigma of cannabis and the perception that cannabis is just about getting high. The true base of this plant has to be known.
I don't think anybody should ever go to jail for cannabis. Get some medicine, and everybody should have access to it.
This is something which, at the very, very least, is the key to alleviating suffering and extending life for millions of human beings. Right? For returning some kind of balance to our society, and quite possibly of restoring our planet's natural balance as well.
Now we turn to New York, where that state continues to stumble its way through the opening of a legal adult use market. The latest involves a female-owned Hudson Valley company called Jenny's. Reporting by New York Cannabis Insider showed that Jenny's owner has been retaliated against by the New York Office of Cannabis Management. Not once, but twice. Last summer and fall, Jenny had tried to get OCM's attention about illegal and unfair practices that were hurting small businesses. And in a recorded phone call, an OCM official admitted to knowing about these activities, but said he would do nothing about it. When a reporter asked the official about the recording, he screamed at the reporter, quote, "I know it was Jenny," unquote. Soon after, OCM raided a dispensary, singled out Jenny's product, and issued the only recall in state history, claiming that the product was unsafe. That was not true, but it was reported in national media. And OCM wasn't finished. Just this month, another article was set to drop about the retaliation, along with multiple complaints from social equity licensees and others. And OCM conducted an unannounced inspection of Jenny's facility. This week, Damian Fagone was suspended, and Governor Kathy Hochul has embedded an advisor in the OCM office and ordered a full investigation. Sounds like a mess. New York may end up with the worst rollout of a legal adult use market. Getting it right from the beginning has been the biggest challenge of any of the new legal states. Here's one more, though, with Harry Bernstein's Ohio report.
This is Harry Bernstein with Verde Compliance Partners and the Ohio Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. While some lawmakers continue to debate the finer points, the good news is that Ohio's Division of Cannabis Control is powering forward with the implementation of the adult use cannabis program. The goal remains to award licenses by September of this year and have a fully functioning adult use cannabis market in place by the end of 2024. Division Superintendent Jim Caneva remains optimistic. The division continues to propose regulations, and he recently stated that he anticipates up to 300 dispensaries opening their doors by September 2026. The Division of Cannabis Control is doing what it can to ensure it meets this target date. Despite the inevitable political hurdles, it seems more certain than ever that Ohio adults will soon have the freedom to choose cannabis. That's the Ohio Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Harry Bernstein with Verde Compliance Partners, reporting for Weed Talk News.
The passing of the 2018 Farm Bill opened up a Pandora's box for many in the hemp community. Unfortunately, many are growing and manufacturing a product that tests more than 0.3% THC. And now Wyoming is throwing some more strict regulations on the hemp and Delta 8 industry in that state, and the industry in there is in trouble. Under the new rules that are official on July 1st, state officials will now conduct chemical analysis testing to make sure that product is compliant with the new laws. There's a new law in South Dakota too, but like so many regulations, there is some confusion on the more strict inspections of the products for that state's medicinal program. The governor there, Chris Goldstein, has been making it as difficult as possible for anyone in the industry to operate. And she is no fan of the plant medicine. We know Brandon Jones is a friend of the industry, and Missouri continues to break sales records and expand their market. And here's Brandon's Missouri report.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And that's right, the census report came out and Missouri has passed Colorado in sales. So yes, California, be ready. Missouri and the Midwest, we are consuming a lot of cannabis and finding it as an alternative way, to get off of other types of ways to deal with pain and other issues. Also, the micro licenses that we talked about last time, 15th through the 29th of April is the last time you can get applied for those second round of micro licenses, which is another reason why people from out of state are trying to get in here, is because we have so many different events where vendors can pop up and sell different ancillary products to the cannabis industry. And so we're seeing lots of different events here that are taking place. I kind of have just a little bit of a personal story. As I've talked about many times, my friend Bill was the one that got me off of opioids after my car wreck. And I actually have a piece of glass coming out of my nose right now from my wreck in 1998. And I know many people start off cannabis as the gateway drug, or at least that's through the DARE era it was called. And for me, it was an exit drug. And it was brought to me by my dear friend who later in life found that he didn't have a different way to deal with his pain. He went through depression, and unfortunately, as time happens, sometimes you fall out of contact with some friends and people that are even really close to you some parts of your time, and found out that he lost a battle with alcohol and depression, and I will be at a funeral tomorrow. So just remember, people, that reach out to those you haven't reached out to. If those are being quiet, go out and talk to them. And again, asking how they are one time doesn't really do it justice, right? You got to touch base, and make sure everybody's doing all right. So if you haven't talked to one of your friends in a while, just reach out and call someone today and say hello and just say, how you doing? Because mental health is a real thing. And I'm just glad that I was brought to this place by my friend before he got taken away from us. So please, again, I'm Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution, Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Stay educated and medicated. Have a great week. Love you, Bill.
The Whitney Group is one of the most respected financial analysts in the cannabis industry. And this week, they released a market report on the future of cannabis sales in the U.S. First of Bo Whitney reports that there will be a 9% growth this year, and his Whitney Economics Group is projecting $31.4 billion will be spent. He is also projecting that by 2030, that total will increase to $67 billion sold. They did not take into account any changes in federal law. In that news, and the news on the Massachusetts side, pardons Vice President Kamala Harris's roundtable talk, and now the FDA is asking the DEA to move cannabis to Schedule 3. And all this positive news sparked some of the public companies on the stock exchange. So here's our guy who is high on Wall Street, Doug Miller.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. MSO, the cannabis company, raised $25.75 million in senior secured convertible debentures. The funds will go toward debt repayment, working capital, and general operations, according to a news release. The cannabis has completed a private placement of $19.5 million of 9% senior secured convertible debentures due in 2027. They also issued $6.25 million of notes in exchange for the cancellation of previously issued 6% senior secured convertible notes that are due in 2025. The notes mature in March of 2027 unless they are converted earlier or repurchased. So let's see how the stock chart looks. It's trading around 29 cents and it's looking good. It's crawled up through the MACD and it's ready to run. So as I always say, lock in profits on the way up and trade safely. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
In a new survey in Canada, that country's legacy market is getting beat up by the legal industry. Canada has legalized adult use for 6 years. And now Statistics Canada released shows 71% of the 18 to 44-year-old market are buying legal products at dispensaries. So with more from Canada, here's Debbie Facey.
This is Debbie Facey with Weed Talk News coming at you with this week's Canadian strain. So what we have this week are two smaller stories, but they do make an impact here in Canada. First off, we have is Heightened Innovations, which is a cannabis company that has been specializing in not only just cannabis, but in psychoactives as well. And they have been able to receive a GMP, which is a Good Manufacturing Practice certification, in order for them to do further, I don't want to say services, but further research as well as development product. This is something that is very important when it comes to anything that is going to be legalized, especially when it comes to being FDA approved. Next, what we have is High Tide, which is the owner of one of our largest, I want to say, not franchisees, but cannabis stores, which is Canada Cabana. It currently has over 166 stores here in Canada. And in Ontario, we have 57. Mississauga just recently legalized dispensaries within the city. So Canada Cabana is on their third one. So this is Debbie Facey with the Canadian strain for this week. Peace.
Coming up in the final part of this week's Weed Talk News, we'll check in with NECANN in Boston as the biggest cannabis convention in New England celebrates its 10th year, and more state reports from Arizona and Virginia. So don't go away. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and this is the beginning of our final segment of that show. Now, for this week, there's a report from Arizona, Virginia, Oregon, and I put together a little story about the 10th Annual New England Cannabis Convention that was hosted in Boston at the Heinz Auditorium over the past weekend. Now, before we get to that, though, we've got a clip from Illinois correspondent Thomas Howard, who hosts the Cannabis Legalization News Show that streams live on Sundays at 3 p.m. in Chicago. This week, he and his co-host, Miggy, discussed the letter written to the DEA by dozens of state attorney generals.
Hey, Cannabis Legalization News, thank you for tuning in. It is another Sunday. We have news out of 21, almost half of the country's attorney generals have written letters to Congress. It's our lead story. Is that going to be the end of high hemp? Should we start calling it high hemp? I don't know. Miggy's got some hemp stories that he's got. We also have stuff from D.C. We got a lot of state news. Got to name that strain. Kentucky's in the house. Delaware, New York, Canada. It's kind of international.
What up? Yeah, dude. Lots to talk about. How about that letter, though?
Yeah, this was an interesting letter, and it came out not that long ago, March 20th, so last week. And look at it. It's by how many people? It's a lot. And so it's the signature lines. And so go down to the signature lines and you can see, they start. And so they all have the attorney generals of whom they are from. I think this one's from the state of Indiana and Arkansas. So quite, maybe it's all the Republican ones, but there's the attorney general of Hawaii. There's the one of Colorado, Connecticut, Georgia, kind of expect Georgia and Iowa, and Kansas. But then you have Maryland, Minnesota, Missouri, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Washington. So a hodgepodge of legal and illegal states have sent this to both houses of Congress. And so that is for the Committee on Agriculture in both sides, the United States Senate, and then, of course, the United States House of Representatives.
And this weekend, Boston played host to the 10th annual New England Cannabis Convention. Now, both days, Friday and Saturday, packed 3 exhibition rooms at the Heinz Auditorium in Boston for celebration of cannabis business.
Bon, Switzerland artisanal edible.
The Nikan Cup showcased growing and manufacturers and drew a huge crowd from upstairs from the main convention. There, your usual vendor exhibitions were consumers and business professionals. They all packed the hall. MJ Biz Daily's editor Omar Sachirbe was the keynote speaker. Are you confident that the DEA is going to do something, whether it's just Schedule 3 or a deschedule?
Yeah, I'm not that confident that the DA is going to do something. I think it's possible. I don't want to be doom and gloom and say that they're not going to do it, but I feel like this is something that's been out there for a long time. It's been discussed for years and in even decades, really. So it's not like something new that needs to be thought about, some big deep thoughts on. So I'm a little worried that the DEA is taking so long on this. I'm wondering sometimes. I ask myself if they're finding a way to get out of doing the right thing.
And now we continue with this week's We Talk News with Karen Black and the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for We Talk News. It's story time in Arizona. Story Cannabis, that is. On March 22nd, Story held rebranding events at 2 Metro Phoenix dispensaries it recently acquired. The shindigs followed similar ones at 3 other Arizona dispensaries earlier this month. Cannabis bills in the Grand Canyon state are going up in smoke. Of the 15 or 16 original measures introduced this year, 5 are still alive, 2 in the Senate and 3 in the House. We'll have more legislative updates for you next week. The big news is the Earl Cup, which was held March 16th and 17th in Mesa. It began in 2015 with a mission to help patients get access to plant medicine. It has since evolved into Arizona's largest cannabis awards and festival event and is focused on patient appreciation and dispensary accountability. Here's how it works. Earl Cup secret shops dispensaries in Arizona and blindly tests all purchased products alongside all product submissions in a lab of their choosing. Arizona has no regulations on cannabis testing, so Earl Cup borrows from California's and Colorado's to create their own testing requirements. This year's tester of choice was Level 1 Labs. There were over 35 awards across 2 classes. As for the dispensary class, Aries was the big winner of the weekend, scoring 6 first-place medals and 12 total. Next was Dime Industries with 6 awards and 1 top honor. Notably, Dime placed in all but 1 of the 7 vape pen categories. Abundant Organics took home 5 trophies, Mojave Cannabis Co. and Halo Infusion scored 4 medals each, and Bud Bros, Amber, and Alava each took home 3. Qualifier Farms also scored 3 first-place wins in the open class. That's all for the Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
Oregon has an interesting relationship with legal cannabis. Once again, they grow too much weed, and now sales are going down. Here's Marianne Kursagi with the Oregon Cannabis Report.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This week, Oregon Governor Kotek signed HB 4121, which institutes a permanent license moratorium based on population. This is monumental for a state that has clung to the quasi-open market ideals for so long. It is a relief for most cannabis operators who are struggling to survive. Also, this week, Beard Bros Media published a story by Adam Teuchler with Utopia, highlighting some of the problems with the proposed batch tagging system. The OLCC also held a hearing collecting public testimony about the new batch tagging rules. Initially, batch tagging was supposed to be a benefit for growers who are now required to individually tag every single flowering plant. The concept of tagging a batch of up to 100 plants could provide huge savings to growers. Sadly, the way the OLCC is implementing these changes will create more costs and more headaches for growers. You can also learn more about the details by reading the excellent summary by attorney Kevin Jacoby. And finally, what are your 420 plans? Events will be hopping here in Oregon. Lots of live music and performances. Be sure to check out the Whalers at High Noon and Boring. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi.
Virginia was the first southern state to pass an adult use legalization law. Unfortunately, that state can't get its weed rules together for a launch. And now the battle involves their governor. We have a great insider in that state reporting from there now. So here's Joe Parsons with his Virginia Cannabis Report.
I'm Joe Parsons from the Virginia Cannabis Connection with the Virginia Cannabis Report on Weed Talk News. There was a surprising twist revealed on Friday for HB 698, the bill that was to set the guidelines for the retail cannabis market. Washington, D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab sent a letter to the Capitals and Wizards owner Ted Leonis, stating that the teams are contractually obligated and can't break their lease with the Capital One Arena until 2047, even if they can prepay their outstanding bond debt. He stated in the letter, "I'm advising you that the district does not agree with your legal conclusion that Monumental's proposed arena move to Virginia does not violate or breach its legal obligations to the district." Further adding that Monumental has also broken other promises to the district by negotiating preliminary agreements with Virginia. Why this matters is because key Democratic leaders were hoping that they could leverage the arena deal to get the governor to pass several key Democratic-led bills, including the retail sales bill HB 698. The deal may very well be up in smoke if the arena move is completely off the table. However, it could be the turning point that gets the bill passed, as the cannabis industry could easily replace the lost jobs and revenue that the new arena would have brought in. The bill has an April 8th deadline to get the governor's decision. I will follow up, of course, as this one develops. In other news, 420 is less than a month away. If you haven't already gotten your 420 holiday plan set, I got you covered. The third annual Virginia 420 Festival is going to be raising the bar this year with the first ever dual location event. With more than just great vibes and music, the festival will feature an educational experience with industry leaders, speakers, and pioneers from the industry, and legalization insights from Michael Krawitz. There's also cultivation and industry classes for those who want to be there and ready for when the industry truly unfolds. Don't worry, the music will definitely be on point, with artists like Keller Williams, the Cottonmouth Kings, Roots of Creation, and many, many more. I'm going to be there covering the whole event with behind-the-scenes access, interviews with industry professionals, and several live streams each day. I'm super excited to be able to cover this monumental event. So join me April 18th through the 20th from the Misty Mountain Resort in Greenwood and Garrett Farms in beautiful Salem. For tickets and more information, go to virginia420festival.com. and follow me on Virginia Cannabis Connection as well for updates. Well, that's all for this week's Virginia Cannabis Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Joe Parsons from the Virginia Cannabis Connection. Until next time, stay lifted.
And finally tonight, we try to cover as many news stories as possible in our weekly report. You know that. And today we will extend that to Europe, in Greece, to be exact. It seems that there's a law enforcement officer who was using his patrol car to drive cannabis to a buyer in northern Greece. Now, they weren't setting up a sting. He and his Albanian passenger were trying to sell 225 pounds of cannabis. I mean, who would think that a police officer driving in an unmarked car would get pulled over, right? Sure enough, that's what happened, and he got arrested. You see, that's why we say it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly, and if you are a law enforcement officer, use your own car. That's this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto. We will see you next time.